Welcome to Motor Week. On today's programme, Richard Hammond gets back into the spirit of the hot hatch by comparing the Citroen VTS and the VTR. Ginny Buckley drives the right-hand drive Beetle. Ian Royal gets a drive in the eagerly awaited A2 at the international launch in Saint-Tropez. And Ken Gibson takes a look at the latest Almera on offer from Nissan.
They say that all good things come to those who wait. Well, the new Beetle must be pretty terrific because we've had to wait 2 years to get our hands on the right-hand drive version. 3,000 potential owners have had rather a long wait, but their patience has been rewarded by a rather pleasant surprise with the price. The new Beetle will cost a tad under 15 grand on the road, which is £1,000 less than predicted, and that's a pretty rare occurrence with a new car price. So have those patient owners been rewarded with a good thing? Well, it's a Volkswagen, so these days that's pretty much a cert. And after all, what you're parting with your money for is basically a Golf with a cute retro exterior stuck on the top. The suspension, the steering and the chassis are all from the Golf, as is the 2-litre engine, which it shares with the Golf GTI. And when you get inside, you discover that plenty of the switchgear looks spookily familiar as well. Now take heart all you nostalgia fans, because the interior may look very modern, but there is a hint of 60s flower power. A bud vase, the flowers optional of course. Now if your choice of cars can give total strangers an insight into your personality, then what does this one say about you? Well, if you go off reactions that you get when you take to the road, I'd say that most people reckon you're still an old hippie, living the whole 60s love and peace thing. When you go for a drive in the new Beetle, small children wave at you. Other road users smile fondly as you pass them by. And even the white van driver will stop and let you in instead of carving you up. It's all very unusual. And yes, it's all very friendly and all very nice, but I can't help feeling a bit silly driving this car. You feel very conspicuous, especially when the colour is bright banana yellow. Now, we may love the old Beetle so much that we bought an astonishing 21 million of them, but if we're honest, they were actually pretty awful to drive. And I should know because I learnt to drive in the good old Beetle, and for years I thought that its little foibles were the norm in a car. But I'm happy to report that the new Beetle shares none of its idiosyncrasies. It's a much easier car to drive. The nice big fat tyres give you plenty of road grip, and the steering is very sharp and very precise. As for the 2-litre engine, well, I really can't get my head around the fact that it is in the Golf GTI. It just doesn't feel punchy enough. However, if you do work it, you can get a fair bit of power in the mid-range, and it is quite fun zipping past other drivers on the road and watching their faces when they realise they've been overtaken by a Beetle. While I've no complaints about the drive, I've got to say I do find all this a very strange place to be. This huge expanse of dashboard at the front takes an awful lot of getting used to. It seems a bit weird. And the front pillars, well, they're in the perfect position to obstruct your view. Yes, it all does feel a little bit strange in here. But if we're being honest, those little niggly problems don't really matter. The real reason people will buy the Beetle is because of how it makes them react. And there are so many people out there that will just adore the statement it makes, and they will buy it in droves. Personally, I think that it now looks just so much like every other Volkswagen in the range that it's lost the individuality and the charm that made up the old Beetle. But still, I suppose, even ageing hippies have to grow up at some time.
Hatches. Not like they were in my day. Back then, you could take a corner so fast, you left all the tarmac on one side of the road. And acceleration, well, you had to work hard not to swallow your glasses with the G-force. I remember one lad disappeared altogether after leaving the lights too fast. Found him 3 weeks later, jammed down the back of the driver's seat. Proper cars they were. It's true, most of today's hot hatches wouldn't know a good country lane from a mother and child parking slot in the supermarket car park. And as for power, well, they're all bunged up and stifled, like Sam Fox trying to play jazz on a tuba stuffed full of wet newspaper. Big engines, but all bunged up. Most, that is, but not all. There are some notable exceptions, and this is one, the Citroen Saxo VTS. This is quite probably the very hottest of hot hatches. Hotter than an MP's cheeks after an hour of rough treatment with Madam Payne, followed by a lengthy camel trek, wearing sandpaper underpants. That's very, very hot. It possesses everything that's best about hot hatches, with none of the overweight lardiness so often found in the majority of today's lukewarm pretenders. The engine is just a 16-valve 1.6-litre unit, but it's as fiery and feisty as they come. Every last brake horsepower is directed to the front wheels and dedicated to grabbing the horizon by the scruff of the neck and yanking it towards you. And the size of the thing, it's compact, nimble, pointable, no unsightly paunch to get in the way of serious point-to-point A to B FUN fun. Whoa there! Of course, all this fun can't come cheap. The VTS will cost you £12,270. And as for the insurance, don't even ask, Vicar. Only the over 65s will be able to afford to insure it, and they're not going to want one. So then, for potential boy and girl racers, a hot hatch must remain a distant dream, the stuff of idle fantasy. Or must it? Because there may be an alternative here to the VTS, in the shape of the VTR. Radical, eh? It looks exactly like the VTS. So only those in the know will really, well, know. In fact, one of the few differences is in the engine. It's still 1.6 litre, but it has just 8 rather than 16 valves, so that means 90 rather than 120 brake horsepower. Oh, and it costs about 1,400 quid less to buy and a lot less to insure. But can we really settle for second best? There's no mistaking the decrease in power, but start to throw the VTR around and a strange thing happens. We begin to remember the torquey pleasures of an 8-valve engine. The power is available from lower down in the rev range, and there's none of that buzzy, scrabbly nonsense trying to keep it in a power band narrower than Edwina Curry's sense of humour. Sometimes you've got to live with a car before you appreciate its finer points, and this is an example of just that. Of course, the VTS is fast and frantic, but for day-to-day transport, with the added ability to sneak off to your favourite country lanes for some naughty shenanigans of the driving variety, the VTR is a surefire winner. Far from being second best, there's a fine argument in favour of this car in its own right. At £10,950, the VTR undercuts the VTS by about £1,400. The only thing it's really missing over its frantic sibling is perhaps the ABS, but that'll only cost you a couple hundred quid or so to add on. So there you have it, the VTR, in so many ways the more sensible buy of the two if you're looking for a hot hatch. It'll cost you less to buy in the first instance, even if you spec it up to the same standard as the VTS. And in many circumstances, thanks to its extra mid-range 8-valve grunt, it'll actually be faster and certainly easier to drive than the VTS. And the insurance, you'll save a fortune on that, it'll cost you miles less. So it is definitely the more sensible hot hatch choice of the two. But hang on, we're talking about hot hatches. Who said anything about being sensible?
This is the new Audi A2, the world's first high-volume production car made entirely from this aluminium. It's also got a service module at the front, so you don't need to open the bonnet and get your hands dirty. It's bigger than an A3. So, anything more to tell you? Can't think of anything. But hang on a minute, there is some more. It's now nearly 2 years since Mercedes launched their A-Class onto the market following one or two problems. Well, not wanting to be outdone, arch rivals Audi now launched their small people carrier with one important difference: the aluminium. It's only about 2.5 years ago since this car was a concept at Frankfurt, and like the TT, the production version has stayed pretty much the same as the concept version. You couldn't honestly say it's got stunning looks to it, but I think the design probably grows on you. What you do know you're going to get though is top-class build quality and some sort of exclusivity, because Audi only intend to sell about 2,500 A2s every year in the UK. I think you know immediately when you step into a car, you sit in the driver's seat and you start to drive it, whether it's the right sort of car for you and how you feel about it. And this car to me feels extremely good. No doubt that it's put together extremely well. We've just seen an A-Class just go past on the other side, and really to me there's absolutely no comparison. The steering is nicely weighted, the clutch is nice and light, the gear shift is smooth and precise. All A2s will come as standard with Audi's stability control system ESP, which you can switch off if you get up to 43 miles an hour. After that, it's on permanently to give you some helping assistance should you need it. Going around corners, there's a tendency, as ever with a car of this size and height, for it to roll a little. So why are Audi only intending to sell about 2,500 cars in the UK in a year?
We are positively positioning the A2 as a niche car rather than a volume car. And for us, 2,500 units represents pretty well as many as we were going to get. The production is fairly limited on the A2. I think the Mercedes A-Class was more of a car to increase Mercedes' overall volume. For us, it's a statement of Audi's latest technology.
So, what engines are available in the A2 range? Well, only two, both 1.4 engines, a diesel and a petrol. The diesel is a 3-cylinder TDI producing 75 brake horsepower, fairly respectable acceleration time, 0 to 60 of about 12 seconds, and a top speed of about 110 miles an hour. But it's the fuel economy where you really notice. Boy, will it sip juice, doing over 66 miles to the gallon on the combined route. The 1.4 petrol again produces 75 brake horsepower, similar 0 to 60 in top speed times as the diesel, and that will do about 47 to the gallon on the combined route. One model that Audi aren't intending to bring to the UK, so we're told though, is something that we'll get on the continent, a 1.2 TDI, which will do over 90 miles to your gallon of precious diesel. So why won't the 1.2 TDI come to the UK?
There's a possibility that at some time in the future the 1.2 TDI engine will come to the UK, but I think it'll be a few years down the road. It's a car which is going to be positioned as the high economy car, 3 litres per 100 kilometres, which is about 94 miles per gallon. But for that, you know, the car has to be fairly well stripped out. Some of the features in the car aren't included as standard, and we're not sure whether the UK market are ready for such compromises at the moment.
Now, all cars these days are about having a unique selling proposition, and the Audi A2 is no different. Not only does it have a bonnet which you can't really access the engine through, but it has this unique fold-down flap where you can get access to the things that you really need on a weekly basis, like the oil, the dipstick, and topping up the washer fluid. Build quality has become such an important factor these days, not only for car makers, but for we the public. We want the solid, reassuring thud of a door. Dare it be said, at the moment, that's not what you get with the Mercedes A-Class. It just doesn't have a Merc feel to it, whereas the A2 has an Audi feel to it. And in my opinion, at the moment, nobody builds cars better than Audi. Lightweight construction is what this car is all about. Audi's space frame, first used in the superb A8, goes to the masses in the A2. An aluminium body contributes to over 40% weight saving compared to if this car had been made from steel. That's a weight of just 895 kilograms compared to the A-Class, which comes in at nearly 1100 kilograms. Dimensions indicate that the A2 is longer but narrower than the A-Class. And that extra length means more boot space back here. The A-Class has been criticised for not having enough. The A2 gets 390 litres of space like that, or 1,085 litres with those seats folded back down. And remember, this car is shorter than an A3. Now, interestingly, the A2 has been designed to seat just 4 people with individual sculptured seats here in the back, using what Audi call their space floor concept. What that means is that the rear footwells have been set lower than the front ones, thus creating lots of space and lots of headroom too. Inside on the move, the view from each of the seats is absolutely excellent. And what a lot of people buy these sorts of cars for, of course, is the high-up driving position. And it just gives you such a commanding view of the road. As you can see, there's lots and lots of headroom even for somebody like 6 foot tall like me. I guess the main rivals for the A2, well, of course, would be the Mercedes A-Class, but you've also got to look towards something like the Vauxhall Zafira, the Mazda Premacy, Fiat's Multipla, and Renault's Scenic as the most direct rivals. So just who would buy this sort of car?
I think people who will be interested in the A2 are people who don't want to sacrifice any of the quality that they would expect from an Audi and the prestige elements of Audi, but also a car which is packaged in a more compact way than we have introduced a car in the past. So it's very good space inside for the exterior dimensions. It makes it a very nimble car, fun to drive, and without compromising on comfort, security, safety and luxury.
Final specification has yet to be decided for the UK cars, but expect to see electric windows, height adjustable seats, ABS brakes, alloy wheels as standard, and of course the ubiquitous cup holders. Before we arrived here in the south of France to test the A2, there'd been some criticism back home in some magazines that the A2 suffered from excess noise and a harsh ride and wind noise coming into the cabin when you were cruising at about 70 miles an hour on the motorway. I have to say that I can find no trace of that whatsoever. We're cruising right now at about 70 miles an hour. It's as quiet as anything. There is no wind noise from any of the pillars, particularly around the A-pillars where you would expect it to come in. It is very quiet.
Audi's philosophy is always, Forschung durch Technik, is looking for new ways of doing things. And I think this is another good example of not accepting that that's the way to build a car. A car being built with normal steel construction isn't the last word. And there's been a number of examples over the years, Quattro, TDI, aerodynamics. It's all part of Audi's philosophy to look for new and better ways of building cars which give genuine customer benefit.
So at the end of the day, aluminium like this normally wraps up turkeys. But I think the A2 is anything but a turkey. So who exactly is going to buy this car? Well, Audi predicts sales of around 2,500 a year. So it's going to be a fairly rare sight on our roads. But who knows, with demand, that could soon go up. It goes on sale in September in the UK. Prices at the moment, well, we've heard about £15,000 as the starting price for a base model. But if prices shift during the summer, as they may well do, this could start as low as £13,000. There's no doubt that the A2 is a revolutionary car, and Mercedes-Benz with their rival, the A-Class, could be well and truly foiled.
I'm driving the new Nissan Almera. No, don't switch off. I know the old one was about as visually attractive as Nora Batty on a bad night, but this one is impressively different. You actually get looked at in this one for the right reasons. And that's because it's been designed by British designers just the way we want it, not by Japanese guys who don't know what we want. The Almera is built at Nissan's Sunderland factory, the most efficient in Europe, and a long-term future of 5,000 jobs are dependent on it being a big sales hit. As far as I'm concerned, the new Nissan's in good hands because the car I drove was top-notch for quality. Well done the boys from Sunderland. Take the interior. It's a giant leap forward from the old acres of grey plastic. This one has got everything in the right place and it looks quite reasonable. Inside, it's one of the most comfortable and roomy interiors, and it's more than a match for any of its rivals. It's also full of clever storage space, with no fewer than 20 clever little cubby holes geared for real families. They include a takeaway curry bag hook, a rubbish bin in the rear, and a retractable strap to stop your briefcase bouncing around in the rear. And there's a decent sized boot with a handy stowage net. It's a bold new look Almera that features a sporty new nose with twin headlights, a flying wing grille, and also a very distinctive surfboard style curving roofline. And it happens to have a rear end with a very un-Nissan-like curves. The old car never really had any problems as far as driving and handling was concerned. It was a very competent performer. And initial impressions of the new one is that they've gone on a step and improved it. And that's good news. In three-door form, the Nissan actually looks rather sporty. And when you get it on the road, it doesn't disappoint. It's got very, very good handling. It's very reassured, and it's actually great fun to drive. Nissan are going to be offering 3 different engines, a new 1.5, the excellent new 1.8 that I'm driving, and the 2.2 diesel. Not available for test drive yet, but I have a feeling that the 1.5 is going to be the bargain in the pack. If the engine's as good as Nissan claim, and with a price tag expected to be $10,999, you're going to get an awful lot of car for the money. What's impressed me about the Almera is its sophistication. It's a very refined car, very comfortable car. It's also amazingly quiet, especially at motorway speeds. It's a lot quieter than cars you'll pay a lot more money for. So, is the new Almera the car that can kick-start Nissan's revival under Renault? In my view, the answer is a definite yes, because this is a very impressive car. Compared to the old one, it's a swan to the ugly ducklings. Whether or not it's got the image to compete with the VW Golf and the Focus at the top of the pile, that's questionable. What I am confident about is it will sell, and that's good news, because Nissan and Renault definitely need the Japanese car maker to start to sell in big numbers.
Next week on Motor Week includes Richard Hammond driving the fantastic Fiat Multipla body kit. Join us next week.